Hey friend, welcome to Bible Tract Echoes. I'm Mike McCurry, your host. It's a privilege to be speaking to you today, but I count it doubly a privilege because I won't be the one doing the majority of the talking. Today I get to share the microphone with a young man named Weston Colvin. It's a blessing to see God use young people for His glory. Weston had the opportunity to preach. I was privileged to offer him the opportunity to preach alongside me at a camp in Australia. That's where this recording you're going to hear in just a moment comes from. And Weston did a wonderful job, but God helped him. Weston lost his father. We're jumping into Weston explaining where he was in life and how God used his father passing, not but just a few years ago, to grab a hold of him, to get his attention. And he made a statement on yesterday's broadcast. Of course, you can always find the previous archived versions of this broadcast on your favorite podcast player on demand, Apple or Spotify, what have you. But he said something like this: the hardest things can sometimes be the best things. His desire, his theme for this thought, for this testimony, is this: don't wait. I'm going to let him explain it because he did a much better job than I could do right now. It's coming from a deep place in his heart. God used him. I'm going to ask you to listen to Weston as he shares this burden of don't wait with you.
I wanted to have fun. I was saved, like I said, but I could have cared less. I wanted to grow up. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to eat ice cream. I wanted to do the things that teenagers do and tell stories about and say how dumb they were. And then basically God made me grow up to a certain point. And I shouldn't have waited. I shouldn't have paused long enough in my life for that to need to happen. And so I have 3 points. I actually wrote them down this morning because that's when I decided to preach this. But I have a point that don't wait to be sensitive. And like I said, through this hard time, I was trying to be calloused. I was trying to be reserved. I was trying to be the tough guy. I was trying to put on the show or the facade that I had it all together, that I was going to be okay, that I was going to make it through the storm unscathed. But I realized that in order to come through it how I needed to, that I had to become sensitive to what had happened. I had to deal with the grief and deal with the relationships that deal with my mom's grief to a certain degree. And in reality, what she was going through was much deeper than what I was going through. Not that mine wasn't hard. Mine, I can tell you, mine was not easy. But going and being sensitive to the needs of others, being sensitive to those around you, and being sensitive to what God has for you is a necessary part of growing. And so don't wait to be sensitive. Don't wait to open up to what God has for you, to what hopefully your parents have for you, to what your pastors have for you. Don't wait to allow God to speak to your heart, because before you know it, you'll be further away from Him than you ever thought possible. Don't wait to be sure of your salvation. At the age of 16, after my dad had passed away, basically, I had drifted so far away from God that I wasn't even sure I was saved anymore, because I had so much. You wouldn't think of them as awful things, but God sees sin the same, no matter how awful we think it is. And so I hadn't been right with Him in that way, and so I drifted so far away that my relationship was non-existent. It wasn't there. And so I had to think through and really dig through whether or not I really was saved. And I knew, in my mind, I knew I was. In my mind, I knew I had done it. I knew that I had done the things. I knew I had felt conviction. I knew I had asked Jesus to come to my heart and save me. But it wasn't the same. The relationship wasn't there. And so I talked to my youth pastor about it. And a couple months after my dad passed away, I came to terms with that, and I got that settled. When we were planning for my dad's funeral, my pastor asked me to pick a song, because that was something at that age that I could be a part of and have a part in planning. And I did not want to pick a song. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want this to be happening. And so I randomly said Blessed Assurance for the funeral. And the whole time, I had been struggling with whether or not I was saved. And I never really thought of, when I picked the song, I didn't think about that. I had no idea that was even what I said, really, until we were at the funeral. And I don't know if we were standing or sitting, I don't remember. But I just remember that the God had allowed me to pick the own song that was going to kick my rear in, if you will. It was going to give me the business and speak to my heart. And from that point on, over the next 2 months, I knew that I needed to figure that out. I knew that I needed to settle that. And you can't be too sure that you're going to heaven. It's always a good thing to know exactly how you know that you're going to heaven. And hopefully you already know that. Hopefully you've gotten that taken care of and that you've allowed Jesus to come into your heart. But if you don't know, don't wait to be sure. Don't wait to figure it out if you really did it. And then don't wait to be surrendered. About almost a year later, after my dad passed away, I surrendered to the call to preach. And even after my dad passed away, I'd gotten right with God, if you will, but I hadn't fully submitted the rest of my life. I was okay where I was. I was back to reading my Bible. I was back to listening in church, not just being there. But I hadn't surrendered the rest of my life yet. I hadn't turned it over to him. I hadn't given him my future and my plans and all that goes with growing up and having aspirations for what you want to do and thinking through with, you want to make money or you want to go to college and become super smart. Not that college does that, I guess, but you learn something, right? That's good. But just turning that over and realizing that his plan is way better than what you could ever come up with. And that even if these hard things come in his plan, he's there with you. And my pastor always says, the way of the transgressor is hard. And I hear that probably once a month, at least. And that's good. I need to hear that. But if the way of the transgressor is, it has to be way harder. I know it's way harder because for a while I lived it. For a while, even though I was saved and I knew it was right, I think it's probably even worse to be saved and to do what you know is wrong and to not be okay with God and not be right with God rather than just doing what's right. If you don't have a relationship with God to begin with, you don't feel the separation. You don't feel that you're distant from him. So don't be too much of a man or too much of a young lady, I guess, to be sensitive to what God is trying to teach you, whether that's an easy thing of how to sing in church or whether it's a hard thing of how to grow up through the midst of a trial. And don't be too big for God. God can do anything with anything, right? But if you're too big for God, he's not going to do anything with you. If you think you're all high and mighty and you think that you're just the next big thing, not that God can't do anything with you, but God won't. He is capable to do anything. We know that. But he'll choose not to because he'll find someone that actually wants to be used, that actually is submitted to him. And so we need to be sensitive to that. We need to redeem the time because the days are evil. Don't wait. And don't wait to be sure you know you're saved. And don't wait to be surrendered. Don't wait to turn your life over, because if you start now, it's a compound interest for the rest of your life. If you start doing what's right now, if you start surrendering the little things now, it'll become easier to surrender the big things. One thing that has helped me over the last maybe year or so is take one problem or one spiritual thing that you're struggling with and deal with that thing. Don't try to accomplish the whole picture. Don't try to become, this great super Christian all at once, because you're going to fall flat on your face, and you're going to probably drift farther into sin than you were before because you're upset that you failed. You're going to quit. But if you take it one step at a time and allow God to show you what step you need to take next, but don't wait to take that next step. Don't wait to do the next right thing.
I've not heard many more powerful messages than what we just heard the end of now. And I don't know that I've ever heard one more powerful than that by a young man like Weston. If you'd like to pass along a kind word to Weston, something just to say you've got his back in prayer, or something that was said this week has been a help to you, please feel free to reach out. The announcer will be on in just a moment with all the ways you can connect with BTI, Bible Tracts Incorporated. But if you'd like to, you can text me directly, and I will pass it directly on to Weston. You can text me at 309-316-7240. Once again, a little slower, that's 309-316-7240. It's a big thing for a young man to stand in front of a group of teenagers like Weston did and bare his heart. Can't tell you how proud I am of this young man. And I pray that you will pray for him, that you'll have his back. I'm so thankful for the people that God allows me to serve alongside here at BTI. I'm so thankful for those of you listening right now, that you've lent your ears, as you so often do to me, but you lent them to Weston, and maybe you lent your heart, maybe you gave your heart to God in some way because of what you heard from this young man. We'd love to hear about that. My prayer, as always, is that you have a great day for His glory. We'll plan on talking to you tomorrow. God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to Bible Tract Echoes, the radio ministry of Bible Tracts Incorporated. Want to see our gospel tracts and other resources? Visit us online at BibleTractsInc.org. That's BibleTractsInc.org. Or follow us on social media to learn how you can partner with this ministry. Thanks again for listening. May the Lord richly bless you as you live for Him.